Another type of view that you will find useful when building MVC applications is the partial view. A partial view allows you to put HTML and C# code into a file that you can reuse across multiple other views. We'll see several use cases for partial views in this course, but for now let's say that the div we have here that displays a review is something we'd like to use from several different places. We don't want to duplicate this code every time we display a review. We want to reuse it. So I am going to cut it out of this view, and we're going to come and add a new view into the reviews folder. I'll call this underscore review. Underscore is just a convention that many people use to indicate that this is a partial view. We're still strongly typed against the restaurant review type. I'm going to leave the scaffold template as empty because I already have the HTML that I want this view to have. But I'm going to select the checkbox that says create this as a partial view. That just means when I add it, we don't get the code block at the top that says it tries to set the title. We can still have a model directive and be strongly typed, or strongly typed against a single restaurant review. I'll paste in the code that we had in the index view, hit Control-K, Control-D to do some formatting, and we just have to fix up one thing here. When we were in the index view, we had a local variable called item that had each review inside of it. Now we can just go up to the model, and I could do a global search and replace, but if I'm quick enough with the mouse and keyboard, we should have all that fixed up in no time. That looks good. That's our partial view. It still has a CS/HTML extension, can still be strongly typed. In many ways, it's just like the regular view that we're working with. But the intention here is to render this from different places. And the way you render that partial view is to use the html.partial helper. Tell partial the name of the view that you want to render, in this case underscore review, and then you can pass it the model that it's supposed to use. So we will pass in each item and have that partial view rendered in place here. If I save everything and do a build just to be safe, and we come out and refresh this page, then there is no visual difference, just we've made a structural change in our application. We've created a partial view that we can reuse, or perhaps we might have just done that so that we could simplify this index view and make the for each statement really easy to read. I do want to point out that since we put underscore review.cshtml in the reviews folder, it's only going to be available to the views that are also inside of that reviews controller. If we put it out here in the shared folder, we'd be able to use that review.cshtml from anywhere in the application. I also wanted to show you another scenario for partial views. One way to render a partial is to use this html.partial helper. Typically, this is the approach you take when you want to use a partial view to render a portion of the model object in a specific view. In this case, we are using a partial to render each review in the model, which is a collection of reviews. You can also come across a situation where you want to render something, but it is not part of your model. This comes up frequently with the layout view. Because a layout view cannot be tied to any particular model, it's going to execute for many different views. All those views can be using different model objects. But there is another helper, it's called html.action. What html.action allows you to do is set up a sub request inside of the primary MVC request. It allows you to call into a controller, and that controller can build its own model and render its own view, and the output is placed right here where you call html.action. So this approach is great when you want to break down the request processing and have several controllers involved. So let's say that on the bottom of every page we want to display the number one review in the application. So we can build a controller action called best review that goes out and finds the top review in the database, and then it renders its own view. This is much like all the other actions that we have built, but this action is rendering a partial view, the partial view that we just wrote called underscore review, and it's passing in the model object that it's going to use. We can invoke this from the layout view by saying html.action and saying I want the best review action on the reviews controller. Please execute that and place the output right here. This is not a separate HTTP request. Everything stays on the server, but we're allowing that reviews controller complete control over what appears here when we invoke html.action. So let's save everything and do a build and come out and come to the home page, and you'll notice now we have the best review placed down here. If I come into the reviews that particular review will be duplicated because it's appearing here also. It's on the layout view. It's going to be everywhere. And we've built it using HTML.action, which means we didn't need a specific type of model for a layout view, but we could still take advantage of a strongly typed partial view. One thing to keep in mind if you build a controller action like best review that you intend to call through HTML.action, that is available to the browser because like all public methods on a controller, if the user enters the right URL into the browser, they're going to be able to invoke that controller action. If that is not your intent, what you can do is put an attribute here. The attribute is child action only. And now if I do a build, the only way that I can reach that action is through a child request. If I try to go directly to that action, it's going to fail. Best review is accessible only by a child request. But if we come back out to the home page of the application, that action will still work very well when you invoke it through HTML.action.